In today's society, we live in a liberal, individual, democratic, industrialized society in the developed countries in the Western world. Liberalism is really about freedom from constraints, right? Freedom in the ancient word, right? The ancient meaning of freedom is really freedom through constraints, right? Freedom of mastery, right? Freedom of self, right? Freedom of yourself, right? Freedom to master yourself, right? Today's freedom, we define it as freedom from obligation, freedom from duties, freedom from social responsibility, freedom from constraints. We also have individualism, right? Individualism, atomization. The worst form of punishment you can inflict in the ancient world was to exile, force migrate people. That was the worst form of punishment you can inflict on people. Not death, right? Not killing. Because even though that's horrible, right? Torture, killing people, even though that's horrible, you died protecting your homeland, right? You died protecting your people, right? When you forcibly migrated people out of their own homelands, right? You took them from their place, right? You took them from their roots, right? From their culture. That's what being a slave meant back then. Being a slave meant your ties, your social ties were all cut off, right? You became not human anymore. To be human is to have social connections, right? It's to have social ties. Slaves had all their social connections cut off. That's what it meant to be a slave. Now, right, in today's modern world, we have social mobility, right? We have freedom of movement, right? People move all over, right? They have no root, right? They have no culture. They have no grounding, right? It's ironic. The worst form of punishment you can inflict on people, we do it voluntarily, right? We do it willingly in today's modern Western world. I'm not placing a value judgment on it. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it is kind of poetic. It is very poetic. Today in the modern world, we have the two big freedom, the two big values we have is individualism, right? Personal, and liberalism, right? Liberty, freedom. This is what is manifested in our technology, right? Social media. Take social media for example. What's the two KPIs or performance indicators of social media? Personalization and engagement. Personalization is the most damn narcissistic, the most damn individualistic technology ever invented, right? Because it's personalized to you, right? That's literally how the algorithm is designed. Second, if we take a look at engagement is all about liberalism, right? It's all about freedom to engage with any content, right? It's the most liberal technology there is because you can engage with people all over the world, right? But of course, engagement, what is engagement, right? It's advertisement, right? It's propaganda, it's brainwashing. Every form of social interaction is influence, right? Whether positive or negative, right? Every social interaction is influence, right? And engagement is all about influence. So if we take really the big Malay, right, the big disease, right, we have a profoundly sick society today, a profoundly sick society. It's almost like it's like a frog in boiling water, right? You don't even realize you're in boiling water. Our biggest problem is these two. which at its extreme is disconnection, alienation, isolation, right? Why do people feel so meaningless, right? Why do people's lives feel so empty, so hollow, so meaningless, right? The grind of 9 to 5, right? The sparse communities, not having close friends, right? People are report having less friends than ever. People report feeling lonelier than ever, right? All these things, by the way, they're just normal, right? Every single mental illness is just, it's normal in appropriate doses, right? Being sad, being angry, being frustrated, right? Being weird, right? Being wacky, right? All these are normal, right? But it becomes a disease when it becomes pathological, right? When it becomes pathological, when it negatively impacts your lives, right? And we have a pathological society, a pathological society. You have to look at every ideology at its ultimate conclusion, right? What is its end goal? You have to start from the end, right? You have to begin with the end in mind. The ultimate goal of individualism, right? Individuality is atomization, right? It's loneliness, literally, right? The whole fucking point, excuse my language, the goal of individualism is meaningless, right? Because it's you, yourself, right? It's totally disconnected. Alienation, right? That's the whole point of individualism. Collectivism is another form of individualism, right? Because a collective is what? A collection of individuals, right? It's not collectivism or individualism. That's right. Before that, we just had community, right? We, our identity as humans is defined by each other. Before I get to that, the end goal of the end goal of liberalism, of freedom from constraints, it's death. The end goal is death. What? Why? Because death is the cessation, right? You don't have any more obligations, right? You're free because you're dead. The end goal of liberalism is death, right? Literally, right? Like I said, this is different from the ancient definition of freedom. The ancient definition of freedom is freedom of mastery, or freedom of self. Liberalism is the ideology of death. Individualism is the ideology of meaninglessness. And by the way, right, I'm not judging these ideologies, right? Ideologies are just that. They're just ideology. They're just like money, right? It's just a tool. It's something we made up to make our lives more convenient, easier. But it's just an idea, right? It's just a tool, right? Would I say a hammer is good or bad? It's not good or bad, right? It's a tool, right? Same with an ideology. Is it good or bad? It's just a tool. However, because we don't have that, we don't have the roots, right? Just like plants need roots, humans need roots. And what is a human's root? Culture. We need culture. Of course, culture can become toxic, right? Culture can become malignant, right? Culture can become decaying, right? But we need culture as humans, right? That's what create culture is like the soil of what creates a healthy, happy, vibrant human being. We're just like plants, right? We're just like ants. We need a prosperous, we need a nurturing environment. What a society emphasizes is what it lacks. Today in our society, like I said, our big values today are individualism and liberalism. But that means precisely we lack those things. to make an example, right? To make an easy example, if you're full, you don't think about food at all because you're full. But when you're hungry, you think about food because you're hungry. So when you think about something, it's because you lack it, right? It's precisely because you lack it that you have awareness of something you lack, right? Same with breathing, right? You don't think about air when you have plenty of it, right? Because you're just breathing, right? It's all around you. It's self-evident. But when you lack air, right? When you lack oxygen, right? You can feel it, right? You're like you can feel yourself gasping. It's precisely the same with the values, right? Whatever we're aware of, it's because we lack it, right? And why do we have, right, for all of our emphasis on individuality, individualism, and liberalism, why do we lack so much of it, right? Why do people feel so meaningless, right? Why do people feel so more constrained than ever? Or why do people feel more isolated than ever, right? Isn't individualism supposed to make us feel more self-confident, right? More in touch with ourselves, right? More enlightened, more loving, more, right? It should heighten our sense of self, but it's diminishing it paradoxically, right? The more we focus on ourselves, the less we get of it. And the more we focus on freedom, right, of constraints, liberalism, the less free we feel. Why? Because that's not what we want. And also because our sense of self comes from others. Our sense of self is others, right? They're the same. We need our communities, right? We need each other. I need you, and you need me. Without each other, we're nothing. You are my meaning, you are my everything, and I am yours. And because of that, we've run ourselves into a corner. We freed ourselves from social responsibility, from duty, from obligation. We've run from what it really means to live a good life. People talk about sacrifice, parents sacrificing for their child, later generation or previous generations sacrificing for later generations. I don't believe in sacrifice, and I can say that with certainty. Why? Because my parents never talk about sacrifice when they talked about raising me. Because it was self-evident, right? It's not sacrifice if you do it willingly, right? Physically, yes, you sacrifice, or physically, but emotionally, it's not sacrifice because you willingly step into it. You willingly step into the fire, right? Which is to say you love it. And then that's not sacrifice. That's your social obligation, right? Because you love. Really, archetypally, this is like Jesus, right? Being put on the cross and loving the people who put him on the cross regardless, right? It is symbolically, yes, it's a sacrifice, but emotionally, spiritually, it's not, right? Because this is because it's born out of love. Right now, we have a crisis in meaning in the West because we have forgotten our roots. We have willingly cut ourselves off from the roots. And this also means that it's ripe for us to return home. Ancient people do not really talk about faith because faith is so common sense. It's so self-evident. It's like talking about air. Faith is like talking about air. It's everywhere, right? If you didn't have faith, you would die. You had no choice. For example, hunter-gatherers, even today, extant modern hunter-gatherers have 40-50% infant mortality. Or children below the age of 5, 50% of them die, give or take. Um, People who would make the Polynesians who would island hop, people who would walk across the Bering Strait, people who would go in search of new lands, right? It's all faith, really, right? People back then didn't reason, right? There was no reason to do any of this, right? There's no. Today we are so obsessed with right reason, right? Why, right? Why are you doing this? Why? You don't need a reason. You don't need a reason to do anything, right? It's because it's so intrinsic. It's so, right? It's so like just part ingrained. People back then do not talk about faith because it's so part of their everyday life. It's like air. Nowadays, we talk about faith because we lack faith, right? And when I say faith, faith is really just doing something even without reason. Because that is the natural way of things. There is no reason to any. Reason is something we apply after the fact, post hoc. Science is very valuable, right? And I love science. Science is just like art. Science is a form of art. It's a form of creation, discovery. But science, and so science is a great guide. It's a great starting point. I agree. But science is not the end goal. We have to start with the end in mind. We have to begin with the end in mind, right? And what is the end? Our end is the universe, right? That our end is God. Our end is whatever you want to call it, right? God, the universe, the oneness, whatever you want to call it. That's the end, right? The end isn't science, right? Science is the process, right? But the process is not the end goal. And so now we really have a choice to make. Today in the modern world, we live lives of comfort, of decadence. So we now have the choice to be individualistic. We now have the choice to be liberal. People back then did not have that luxury, that choice. And now we do, right? But just like the Buddha who renounced all his worldly possessions, right, of his princeliness, we too have that choice, right? Do we keep on with this destructive, really, it's a destructive industrialist mindset, right, of consumption, right, of extraction? Do we continue with this, right? We can, right? And like I said, I'm not placing any value judgment on these things, right? It's not good or bad. It's all about we have a choice. We can either go on the route of salvation or go on the route of destruction. Those are the only two choices we have. Pain is the quickest way to learn, right? If you put your hand in fire, you learn instantly. Whereas pleasure is a much more long term, right? Pain is great for short term, it's the quickest. Pleasure is great for long term, right? When I say pleasure, I don't mean hedonistic, I mean spiritual path. Life doesn't have to be difficult, right? You don't need pain or suffering to become enlightened, but it is quicker to become enlightened through pain and suffering. So you have the two extremes, right? The monk who meditates in a cave for 40 years, right? Very little, you have very little stimulation, right? Or the opposite, the complete opposite of the spectrum, which is going all over the world, right? Seeing Antarctica, seeing the Himalayas, doing retreats, right? Learning about all these things, right? Going to the Amazon, going to the Gobi Desert, going to the right, do having in multiple lifetimes worth of experience, right? This whole entire spectrum, right, of between asceticism and worldliness, right? All paths, all paths are viable, right? They're all legitimate, but some paths work better for some people than other people for some other paths, but they're all legitimate. What I really want is I want you to live a good life. I want you to be happy. I want you to be healthy. I want you to live a prosperous. I want you to live a full life, right? When you're at the end of your life, I want you to feel, right, when I ask you, was it worth it? I want it to be a resounding yes, right? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. Was your life worth it? Yes. And that's what I think of all the time. All right, when I'm doing something, right, when I'm feeling frustrated, when I'm feeling anxious, when I feel doubts, when I feel insecure, I can get caught up in all these social realities, and that's part of being human too, right? That's part of the process too. I always think back on the end of my life. Did I did I love people? Did I live my authentic life? Did I do everything I could, right, with what I've been given? Did I do a good job, right? Did I live a good life? Was this worth it? Right? Would this make my mom proud? Would this make my dad proud? Would my grandma approve? Would my grandkids approve? Right? When I say approve, not like judgmentally, but approve lovingly. Approve lovingly. Did I love? Did I learn? Did I appreciate? Was I present? Did I do my best? Did I do a good job? That's all I think about all the time. And just to give a concrete example, um, when I have a friend, a very close friend. I won't name his name, but I want him to live a good life. He's been stuck. I know he wants to do a lot more with his life, and it's um, it's really painful for me, having see him be stuck, because I know what it feels like, right? And I want to help him out, but I'm not his parent, right? I'm his friend. The only thing I can really do is be a good role model and push him where he needs to be pushed and hold back where he has no where he needs his own space. But I sometimes wonder if I'm a good friend, right? I want to be a good friend. I can't blame myself, of course, but I do sometimes wonder if maybe part of him being stuck is also lies with me too. At the end of my life, I want to squeeze every single fiber, every single drop, every single particle of energy from me. I loved fully, right? I was present fully. I lived everything out to my full potential, right? I contributed, right? I did a good job, right? I left the world even just a tiny bit better, even just a tiny bit. I did it all. I put it all out. I put it all out on the field. Whether I was meditating, right? If I was meditating, contemplating fully, right? Engaging fully. And if I was feeling frustrated, right? To truly, like, fully feel that emotion, right? So that I'm truly alive and truly present, right? And when I feel connected with the universe, to truly, fully immerse in that. When I when I was feeling extreme pain in my stomach on the bus, I was halfway to passing out. I stared up at the clouds, and for that moment, I felt like I was one with the world. I could just see the clouds, and they could see me. To honor and cherish every single moment, all of my insecurities, all of my doubts, all of my flaws, but also all of my love and joy and gratitude, all of it.